So, hello everyone, hi. This is not a great angle, it makes my head look even bigger than it is. And yes, I've got a big head, but that's me. So, I'm in Australia and I'm on my way now going to my friend's house, Jody. She moved over from over east of Australia to west to the Perth side within the last year. And we've been friends quite a while, talking for quite a while, and this is the first day I'm going to meet her, and we're going to have a resin play date. So come along and join us. We're going to do some ocean pours, I believe, and we're going to master some ocean selling. I'm not sure if Jody wants me to film or not, but might take the odd photograph, and if not filmed, so we'll see. Might be just a quick one. All right, well, take it easy and we'll see you soon. Bye. All right, please don't forget to put on, before you start, all the appropriate PPE. That's including a respirator and appropriate gloves, which are thick enough to protect your skin from contact to the resin. It's really important, guys. Really, really important. All right, let's go. Just let me do my happy dance. Woohoo, I'm excited. All right, this is the resin we're using today. It's Just Resin's Ocean Coat, as you can read. I've not used this before. So let's see if I'm able to get sales with it. Now, Jody's just popping down some spare molds here. So at the end, when we've got our overpour, we're going to fill those molds and use up the resin rather than leaving it to cure hard on the mats and putting it in the bin. It's much better to be able to pop it into these, give them as gifts or key rings or to sell at the markets, but it's much better to use it up rather than leaving it to dry and have nothing to show for it. It's very expensive resin, so you don't want to waste any of it. Through this video, I'm going to be listening to Jody and I'm going to be following her instructions. These are her coasters and they will be sold with her products, so they need to be consistent with her brand. And so here, what I'm doing is I am pouring 100 mils of part A and 100 mils of part B. This is unique to me. This is a really thick resin, a lot thicker than I'm used to. So I'm trying to be very precise with the mixtures. As you know, it's important to make sure that you have accurate levels for mixing to make sure that you have a really good cured resin at the end. You see these coasters, they are pre-coated and prepared. Jody has carefully taken them outside and sprayed them with paint, and we've allowed that to dry completely before we even think about adding any resin over the top of it. All right, so I'm going to get on with mixing this resin together shortly, and then we're going to add the colour. It's a Just Resin colour pigment and it's a paste, and we're going to use one colour, and we're going to use various levels of amounts of that pigment in each pot to create 3 different shades of that pigment. The first being translucent, so we're literally going to stir the pot up and then scrape off the stick, and whatever's left on the stick, then that is what we're going to use for the first level. The second level, we're going to probably use about a pea size amount, and then for the third level, probably 2 pea size amounts of paste. That way we get the depth. And towards the end, Jody will add a small pot where she'll add another pea size amount, so we can put a couple of lines of deeper shade through just to have movement in the colours of the resin that we'll add later once the resin has had time to sit. All right, before we go ahead with the colour, let's get on to mixing this resin. Let me come up and show you a bit closer. All right, just quickly before we get to mixing the colour, we must mix the resin. And here I am. It's a really, really super thick resin. Super thick. So as you can see there, dripping off the spatula. And we're going to give it a really thorough mixing. As you can see, both Jody and I are not concerned with bubbles because we're not casting. We are just making sure that we do a complete mix, making sure both A and B are completely combined for 3 minutes. Jody's got a timer on. We won't bore you with waiting for those 3 minutes, but as you can see there, we are vigorously mixing. We are going to torch it, and that will remove the bubbles from our coasters and the clock that you see Jody's going to make there. All right, so here we go. So I'm adding, or should I say splitting my resin into my little separate cups here. As you can see, these are paper cups. That's similar to what I do. I have my paper cups, I cover them in resin, I reuse and reuse them. It doesn't matter the colours in there because it's cured resin. And it saves wastage. So we don't have to go and buy expensive cups everywhere. Just reuse what you've got. So I am pouring my resin in equal quantities of my colour, and I'm going to save a little bit of clear at the bottom of my mixing pot there for going in front of the colour and before we add the white, because we want to blow that white over clear resin. So try and avoid it from blending with the coloured pigment resin. We want to keep that white crisp and white, basically. So what I'm going to do now is get that mixing process started. So we'll just leave some music on now, and you can watch the little dip scrape off, add a bit more, add a bit more. Here we go. All right, so we're back now, and we're about to start the exciting bit, and that is going to be pouring. So let's get on with the fun bit. And we're just making sure, first of all, we've got equal spaces between so that we're not going to move all the coasters in the middle of pouring, and making sure all our beaches are facing forward in the same direction so that we can get the pours of the colours pretty consistent. So I'm trying to follow Jody's leadership here, because at the end of the day, these are Jody's coasters. So we want to try and make them as consistent as possible, even though 2 different people are doing them. So I'm watching carefully what she's doing, and I'm trying to mimic the processes that she's doing, how much quantity she's putting on, etc., etc. So I'm quite enjoying. I'm a little bit slower. I'm trying to be a little bit precise, too precise if you ask me sometimes, to be honest. Whereas you can see Jody's quite adept to doing this process and knows exactly how much to add, and her pattern is consistent as well, whereas me, I'm trying to be designer. I soon realised that I have to do similar to Jody, because again, these are her coasters and this is her brand, so I do correct that and try and get the curves as close as possible to what she's doing, again, to keep them consistent. And the resin's going to do what it does anyway, and it's going to go where it wants to go. So even if you do, it'll end up in different shapes anyway. So yeah. It is really fun at this stage working with a thicker product. I'm so used to working with a thinner resin that the resin sort of spreads out a lot more quickly. This, wherever you place the resin, it stays because it's so thick. And you can see me, I'm like, well, okay, I'll just spread that out a little bit. I'll join that bit. And as I'm going backwards and forwards, there's little gaps between the resin. I'm having to use the stick to blend it. Well, I shouldn't have bothered doing that, to be honest, because shortly I'm going to be using my fingers and we're going to be blending all three colours when we add them onto the coasters. So I shouldn't need to be as precise as what I'm trying to be here. But again, I've not done this with Jody before, so I'm unaware of the process. So in hindsight, I should have just put the colours down like Jody is. It would have been quicker and more efficient. So anyway, on that note, let's move on. Jody's going to put this colour over onto her clock. So let's go and see how she does that. This is a better angle actually for you to see the process. So I'll try where I can to keep coming in at this angle so that you can see. It's the same process as what we do on the coasters. So, but you'll see a little bit clearer. So Jody's adding the transparent colour. And as you see, when it's smeared and blown, you can still see through to the spray painted beach surface there. Isn't that colour divine? I think it's stunning. Stunning. There you go. Let's get back to the coasters. All right. So let's get on to the second colour. You can see Jody's on that now. And I'm just about to follow in her footsteps. So we're just going to add that second layer of the colour to give the next layer of depth. Again, don't be too precise, Sarah, but you know me. You know me. Yeah. Too fiddly I am. So you can see here Jody's just getting that colour on behind. The most important line was that front line where you can add the detail. The second colours and the third colours, you just really need to slap that colour on in the places where you want it to be, because you're going to be manipulating it with your fingertips shortly. But again, I didn't know this process just yet. So here I am being way too precise, taking way too much time. Thankfully, we're not under time crisis as I'm learning. But you can learn from me. Don't do what I'm doing. Watch Jody's process because she's the one that does this all the time. But you get the idea. You can take your time while you're learning. You'll still get there in the end. And this resin, as I say, you've got quite a long work time with it. The open time is great. All right, what I'm going to do now is just quickly jump over to Jody adding this shade onto the clock so you can see that process. Let's go. All right, so you can see that second shade is a few shades deeper, but the same pigment as I previously explained. So again, we're just popping that on and then it will be spread out. And you can see it doesn't take a lot of resin either. Remember that, because we're going to spread it out thinly. Okay, so here Jody's flicking onto the third layer now, adding the third colour. Same pigment again, just deeper shade. And I am still on my second layer. So I will speed up shortly though and add more and just get that done, that third layer. In the meantime, let's go and flick over to the third layer on the clock. And when I get back, we'll be on the third layer of my coasters. Okay, so you'll get a better view now of that deeper opaque colour of the same pigment for the third deeper area of the ocean. Yeah, and Jody's going to make up a little bit more deeper shade again, just to put some variation lines in there to show movement shortly. Okay, so here I'm adding my third layer of colour. And you can see there in the background, Jody's already added her colour. And what she's doing is she's lifting up with the clean hand, and with the other hand, her right hand, she's putting her finger through the resin just to blend those shades together. And I'll get there shortly. But look at the colour. You can really see that colour variation where I'm putting it. And you can see there, I'm not being as fussy now with this deep colour. Just adding it on, making sure it goes over the edges. And that's it really. So I'm getting a bit faster. everyone. I'm getting a little bit better, more confident with what I'm doing with Jody's process and colours. So there you go. Let's move on. Okay, so you see me picking it up here. Hopefully it'll all be in view that you can see still. So what I'm doing is just ensuring that the edges are all covered so that the resin will pour over the edges nicely with my fingertip. And then I'm going to go in and just manipulate those shades. There you go. Just blend them with your finger. Not too much. You don't want to have it all a uniform colour. You still want to see the different shades of that. So you can see there, I've just moved those lines. There's no solid lines there of the different shades. This will give you a clearer indication of what we're doing. So again, just spreading out that resin on the board, on the clock here, and using the fingertips to do so. Not being precise, just making sure those colours are going over the edges and blended so you don't get a solid one shade, you know what I mean? Making sure it goes right round and under the clock edge there, making sure that we've got an even flow. That way you stop any drip lines on sides of your piece. Isn't that beautiful? Those colours are gorgeous. We're adding some of that deep in there, some of the lighter at the back. And just blending it really, creating motion and movement in the colours. Stunning. So here you see Jody's added a little deeper shade into that pigment again, and she's just adding some variation now just to show some movement in that back end and a bit more depth in colour. And she's just going over the top of the previous colours. And we're just going to blend it through with fingers again. And not too much because we want to see that depth. We want to see those lines, but we don't want it to be blotches. We just want it to blend through. Very simple. There you go. Look gorgeous. Okay, so Jody's added that depth into the back of the coasters here too. And I'm just doing the same following path. So you can just see there I'm adding a bit of variation, and then I'm going to blend it with my fingers, same as Jody. These are looking fabulous so far, aren't they? Loving it. All right, so what you can see there now in the background is Jody's got the pot of clear. So she's just slightly still ahead of me, but she's just adding a clear layer in front of the colour so that we've now got a break barrier between the colour and where we're going to place the white. Because as I said earlier, we're going to push that white over the clear to try and prevent the white from blending with the blue, becoming a pale blue. We want it a crisp white, and we want those clear cells to sit over the top of the colour. So here with Jody, you get to see that process a bit closer. You can see how delicately she's just going just in front of that colour with that clear to create that break barrier of the water. And then you'll see the process when she adds the white and where we place that in a minute. Okay, so Jody there is adding the white, and it's just placed in front of the clear layer, but touching the clear layer and touching the spray painted sand. All right, so, and she's just going along, putting a thin layer, not too thin, but definitely not too thick. You want it to be a delicate blow. I'm doing the clear layer now in front of my colour. And so I'm just adding that in, making sure I've got enough. Again, I'm being a bit picky. Try not to add too much. Don't want it to come all the way forward, but I do see my colour is creeping slightly forward. But that's okay. What we'll do is we'll nip over onto the clock when Jody moves over so you can see it a bit better, the process. And by then I should have caught up to Jody. There is a reason I'm behind, is because I'm watching her first, because I'm learning from what she's doing. I want it to be good. I don't want to ruin these. So again, here you go. You'll see that clearer view. You can see how Jody's laying a thin layer And she's going carefully along that front line of the clear. She's also ensuring that it does go down and drips into where the numbers of the clock will be. So yeah, starting from the other side. Again, just making sure that we've got it touching the clear layer and the sand base, so that when we blow it, it'll stick to the sand base and blow over the clear and over the colour. Isn't that stunning? Again, not adding too much because we want it to be a very delicate cell base. We don't want it to be overpowering and take over all over the colour that we've just carefully laid out. Okay, so what you see us doing now is torching the resin. And it's quite a powerful torch, this one, but you don't want to stay in one spot on the resin. You want to keep it moving. What you'll see is the white of the resin, like it's like looking really pale. And then when you go over it with the torch, you'll see that colour pop. That's all the bubbles dissipating out of the resin. And then just make sure you've got the water white also warm. And then we're going to start blowing the resin out. All right, so I just did a quick zoom in so you could see a bit clearer how Jody's blowing those waves. She just heats up the resin slightly and then blows the white over and doesn't overblow it either. It's a very quick process. And you'll see here that Jody and I both have different shaped nozzles. Mine's a lot narrower, Jody's is a lot wider, but both of them are the staggered sort of cake top nozzle head. So I'm trying to copy Jody, but Jody's getting wider blowing, and I'm getting more narrower blowing. So it's giving slightly two different effects, but still similar. And you see straight away the magic start happening and the cells start producing. It's amazing. So I'm just taking my time. I'm angling my heat gun and I'm trying to go from one side to the next to try and produce a similar effect to Jody's. So heat it up slightly and then blow from one side over. And the difference, I think, with Jody and I thought about this after, is Jody kind of goes backwards and forwards, but like crossing one swoop and then back slightly in one swoop and again. And that way she will get sort of a couple of layers of the waves. So this is the one and only layer of white that she puts on the coasters. The clock will have a second layer on it, but these coasters will only have the one. Let's jump over to the clock now, shall we? All right, so just warming up that resin a little bit and blow. And again, we're not going to blow the whole way over the clock. Jody's just going over that lighter translucent area with the waves, and she's just going to push them out, heat them, push them out, heat them, push them out, and just to get some different wave effects and not overheat it. If you overheat the resin, it gets too hot, the cells will, the outer layer will break, and then that'll be it. It'll just blend into the resin. So you mustn't overheat your resin when blowing out your white, and you don't want too much movement where it's going to start bleeding into the colour background. So we're just softly blowing, and isn't that beautiful? Don't overthink it like I do normally. Okay, we're just getting it moving and then blow it out. Stunning. Okay, so Jody just showed me now, in order to get those cells activated, we're just going to go over with the torch again, and that's just going to encourage those cells to pop. But only a brief heat. You don't want to sit on anyone and scorch it, so just be careful. You're just going to go over quickly with the torch, and that's going to help those cells to pop. Done. Oh, and don't forget, as I always say, if need be, go ahead and redress your wave line. If it's blown out too much and it's too thin, you want that lovely solid line, then you just go over and redress the line. And that's what Jody's doing here. She's just going on with a very fine amount of white, just so you got that solid raised area of the line. And this resin holds that raised area beautifully on these coasters. Stunning. Really, really lovely. Mine, I've not blown them out as much as Jody. She got better cells than I have as well, because she blew it out a bit more, so she's redressing a few of them. Mine, I feel, don't need redressing on this occasion, but Jody does come over. I ask her to come over and just to put that Jody effect on them. There's a couple that needed touching up, so she did do that, just to help them looking correct. Right, so here we are. Well, the leftover colour resin I've got here, I am just pouring it into these moulds. I'm going to speed it up. You don't need to watch me doing each individual one. Then I'm going to move my coasters over onto the mat on the right, and I'm going to scrape up as much of the resin off the mat from the overpour, and we're going to use that in the moulds as well. So I'm going to put it on high speed because you don't need to watch it all, but you get the idea of what we do. We don't like to waste the resin, and somebody can have it as a free gift with their orders, or Jody makes them into key rings or bookmarks, and they're really quite cute. So it's a great way of using up your resin rather than just leaving it to cure on the mat and then it goes in the bin as wastage. Okay, final quick torch just to dissipate any bubbles that have risen to the surface. And yeah, it's looking great, Jody. Really looking good. All right, I'm just give it a quick torch again over those coasters as well. All right, let's just do a final check for hairs and debris on our coasters and clock. So we're going to go along with the tweezers if we see any little imperfections on the surface of the resin, because dust can land on them, hair can land on them, and we're just trying to eliminate that as much as possible before they cure, and then they'll have a final top coat added on top of them as well. All right, look at these. These are beautiful. Look at the cells, how delicate, the movement, the colour gradient. It's just wonderful. And look at this. Wow. Wow. Look at the cells. Look at how beautiful that is. And can you see that front line of this resin? How you've got that little raised lip. It doesn't just blend flat. It stays with that raised lip, giving you that effect of water coming over the beach. Beautiful. Well done. And these are Jody's. You can see the difference in Jody's cells from mine. They are amazing. And you also see the layers of crashing waves. She is so clever at this. She's an inspiration, actually. Look at that. So mine were okay, mine are good, but Jody's are stunning. Just love it. Just absolutely love it. Thanks, Jody, for letting me come for the afternoon and to have a play date with resin. I had a blast. Absolute blast. Don't forget to check out Jody's business channel and go in there and say hello. Comment on here. Say hi to Jody.